Welcome to the Real Life Magic Virtual Summit. I'm Alicia Levino. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm an author, adventurer, history geek, and spiritual seeker. I've been following my spiritual path for over 20 years now, every day, and it's led me on some incredible adventures. Most recently, I was called to the south of France, where I was taken under wing by mystery master Henry Lincoln. He's the co author of Holy Blood, Holy Grail, the book that inspired the Da Vinci Code. And he's the man who actually found the codes in the south of France and followed them, undergoing an adventure a lot like the Da Vinci Code himself. Sir Henry charged me with writing the real story, the truth about what was hidden in codes through the ages by our ancestors, and the real spiritual message underneath. So last year, my novel, visionary epic, The Heretic, was released. For this event, I got special permission. I'm so excited to release The Heretic to everyone who registers. So you will get a copy in your inbox when you register for the event. But when the pandemic hit, I realized that we needed something a little more diverse, a little more broad, something that could really speak to everyone and meet them where they were at. And so the Real Life Magic Virtual Summit was born. This summit was designed as an event to bring together spiritual teachers from around the world to help you discover and train your unique magic. Every one of us has something special. Every one of us is unique. And right now on planet Earth, we're undergoing this immense transformation. We are anthropologically, we are at the head of a 10,000-year cycle, a 5,000-year cycle, and a 500-year cycle. And we are literally entering a new era on planet Earth where humans are evolving to become something that we've never been before. So, this summit is an invitation to step into whatever your natural, magical evolution looks like and join us in creating a beautiful future for planet Earth. I'm here with Lindsay Fuller, content curator for Real Life Magic, and the first one to see the entire Real Life Magic virtual summit. Lindsay, tell us, what was that like for you? What did you learn? What was your experience of these magical masterclasses?
Well, I had really no idea kind of what I was getting into when I took on this sort of special project that my dear friend Alicia invited me into, and really was rocked and moved to my core by how powerful and how relevant they were to our modern dilemma of sort of living inside during a pandemic. Um, Everyone had a unique perspective on sort of lessons in grief, in loss, in deepening and knowing yourself better, in broadening your practice, in adding discipline to your daily magical practices as well as your nutrition and your fitness. It was really inspiring to see everyone sort of coming at the same truth, capital T, from a different lens and from a different angle, and sort of that we're all exactly where we're supposed to be on the journey, if that makes sense.
What were some of the lessons that you really took with you into your life, or some of the messages that stood out to you?
Not to think of myself as weird or strange or other, because I have a bit of clairaudience. Not to think that that animal isn't actually talking to me. Yes, it is. It's communicating in frequencies that are too low for me to hear with my human ears, but it doesn't mean that it's not energetic frequencies. To learn to watch the trees from one Philip Carr-Gomm, who I become particularly a fangirl of, and now I have a special deepening relationship with the trees as I do the animals in the natural world and myself. So those were just some of the like big lingering effects of these teachings, if you will.
One of the things I love most about the summit is that there really is something here for everyone. There are different takeaways. If you asked every single person what their takeaway is, I think we'd get a different answer. So, what are you most excited about seeing open up as a possibility as this summit goes out into the world?
I am so excited for the people that have already sort of coalesced around the heretic and the real life magic groups that are out there in the internet, to see these teachings, to tell their friends that are a little on the spectrum, as I call it, of on the magical spectrum, if you will, that might feel seen and known, and that there's a group out there for them. Sometimes when you're alone in places and geographies around the world where these topics aren't discussed around the dinner table like they are in some people's homes, it's just a comfort to know that there's a community out here for this. So, and it's very welcoming, very engaging, and fun, and silly, and playful, and just a real joy to be part of.
Wonderful. I think the community has been one of the most touching elements for me as well, just connecting with these teachers and now heading into connecting everyone around the world who is coming together around these magical topics. So, thank you so much for being here with us today, Lindsay.
You're so welcome. Thank you for allowing me to get to talk to people like Fiona Gilbert and so many of these amazing teachers that are going to become, I believe, friends as well. So,
We're going to open the Real Life Magic Virtual Summit with a ritual. Ritual is an element of our lives that has been mostly lost in the modern world. And as we will discover later this week with our wonderful speaker, William Ayat, ritual is something that can add a huge depth of meaning to our lives. It's a way to give our souls a message. It's a way to give a message to the world. And it's a beautiful and rich form of communication. So, as we dive into this summit and all of the magic that's possible this week, all of the transformation that people around the world are going through, we are going to begin by opening a space that can hold everything that will happen this week, a space where it is safe to explore, a space of love, and a space of divine healing. So I have here a wonderful kind of bowl that I have prepared. And this has been prepared with intention. And what is in this container is a wonderful little treasure or stone for each of our speakers, and one for me as the host. One for all of the glorious magical creatures and spirit guides and invisibles who will be joining us throughout the week. One for you, everyone out there who's going to be joining us, and one for the divine. So I'm going to just begin by lighting this candle. And as the candle is lit, it's the moment when the summit begins and we step into a sacred space. And I invite all of you, as you're watching this, wherever you are, to allow yourself to step into your magic, to step into this magical space with us. The space is now open. We invite in the divine in all forms and ask that love be present in everything at all times. We invite in all the magic of the ancestors. We invite in all the wisdom of the ancients. We honor all the elements. We invoke all the directions. We honor and greet you with appreciation and joy. We are creating a seal for the highest good and highest service of all. And so it is. All right, let's get this thing started. I'm here with Robert Kittredge, Aurora Pagonis, and Judy Thurston. You guys are a powerhouse crew of folks living your truth. That can be pretty scary for a lot of us. So, what I want to know is what are the real benefits of living our most authentic life? Is it worth it?
Well, I think the important thing when I start to tune into being my most authentic self and living my most authentic life, what starts to bubble up is about being true to myself. And to actually be able to capture being true to myself, it's taken a journey. And that journey has taken courage, moving really from the invitation of living my life from what was coming through from my head and taking the journey to the heart. And in the courage to actually move through life from my heart, starting to tune into what are my heart's deepest desires. Because I actually feel our heart's deepest desires is more than a place where we get lit up and excited. It actually is a place that actually directs us to our true north. So, living my most authentic life or living our most authentic lives is really about starting to tap into the magic and the power that lives in our hearts and then actually points us to our purpose. You know, it is my belief working with many women and men across the globe as a coach that as we start to tap into our purpose, that we bring something very special. It's almost like we start to weave this tapestry, you know, a tapestry that without each individual's unique purpose, it just doesn't quite make it as beautiful and as powerful. So the reason why it's so beautiful is that not only do we feel so fulfilled and lit up when we're actually living an authentic life, we actually get to make our chance of difference, our point of difference in the world. I think that's the main thing. And is it worth it? Absolutely. You know, I would imagine most of us would say, you know, life has taken me to so many incredible experiences, including places all over the world as I've continued to dive into my most authentic life. And it really is a work in progress because it's very, very easy to get pulled back out into what we should be doing or, you know, what the norm is, whatever that is. So staying with the magic of the heart and staying in the direction of right here, right now, with each of you, really supports that every single day. Thank you so much, and I'm going to ping over to you, Mr. Robert.
Thank you. That was spot on. You know, what is living your true self? Well, most people have no idea what that is. We're born true, we're born whole, we're born complete, we're born perfect, but we're conditioned for failure. And we live that story. And unfortunately, what that leads to is making choices and decisions through the conditioning, not through our authentic self. For me, that was 60 years of that, and multiple marriages, multiple jobs, all kinds of stuff. And when I truly learned who I am, what my design is, what my authentic true self is, now I get to start peeling back that conditioning and living in my true authentic self. Is it worth it? Absolutely. Is it easy? Not at all. Is it hard work? Yes. Is it terrifying? Sometimes. But is it worth it? I am, and I was just talking to a friend this morning and yesterday about how life feels right now is the best I've ever felt. And I say feel because I've never been one to look at emotions. I've been one throughout my life that has been suppressed emotions. And it's really that energy, as Aurora was talking about, from the heart, from the emotions, from the solar plex, that we make those decisions through, not our mind, not our conditioning. Unfortunately, we're taught that is the way to do that. And having that authentic true self, as Aurora said, that purpose and living from it, oh my gosh, does life become, I kind of talk about it as life becomes delicious. I'm a foodie, so it's all about how things taste and that kind of thing. So it's just life is beautiful. And is it worth it? Yeah, and it's never too late. It's never too late to discover that.
100%. I hear a lot of people talk about the imposter syndrome. And here's my little take on that, is that when you live in your most purest, authentic self, you're not going to struggle with imposter syndrome because you're you and no one's going to be a better you than you, right? And so I really feel like I have stepped into this way later in life, like in my 40s, finally feeling comfortable in my own skin and being able to look at myself in the mirror and actually like what I see looking back at me. And for me, I think there's so much value in that. And there's such a gift in really being that comfortable with yourself. And it's sad to me that, especially as women, we spend so much time and so many years, just struggling with this idea of, comparison, or I wish I was more this, or I'd be happy if this happened, or when I get there, right? And so what if we just really sat in our true self and really appreciated and were grateful for every flaw, every imperfection, and even celebrated the gifts and the highlights and the things that we do love about ourselves without any apologies. How would that feel? What would that look like? And so I'm excited to be halfway point of my life and actually living in that way. And I'm telling you, it's so much fun. And I always tell people, it's when you are in your authentic lane, there is no competition. There's nobody there. You're the only one on your road, on your lane. So that's my answer. I feel like if people really embraced that a lot more, we would see just a true joy and a pure joy of really loving, how we show up in the world.
I love that image of there being no competition because you're the only one in your lane. That is just a wonderful picture. I think so many of us can fall into the trap of looking left and right. And when we can just remember that, hey, I am the only one doing this thing, there's a real power there.
There is. And people will even say, well, like I just wrote a book, and there's the struggle for authors of like, well, somebody else wrote that book, or somebody wrote that book way better, or whatever, but nobody has your story, like your story from your lens, from your experiences, from your past. And I just think everyone has their unique gifts and we should all celebrate it. So.
I'm here with Philip Carr-Gomm and Jules Heavens. I often say that we're not alone on this journey of awakening, that you are not alone. All over the world, we're walking this path together. So I'd love to hear from you two. Do you feel alone, or do you feel supported by the world on this journey of awakening? Philip, what's your experience?
Well, my sense is that one of the big reasons for following a spiritual path, and particularly nature spirituality, is to connect us, to bring back a sense of connection to all sorts of beings at all sorts of levels. So it's not only at the one level of incarnated human beings that we're all together with, and more than at any other time in history, I believe people are following spiritual ways. Thanks to at one level the internet and publishing, but at another level to some subtle, karmic reasons and all the rest of it. But millions of people are feeling, are connecting and feeling united. But at other levels, in terms of feeling supported by the natural world, by the animals, by nature spirits, by the elements, by the ancestors, by beings who are in forms of consciousness that perhaps we can't even conceive. But by opening ourselves to the possibility, we can feel really connected to all sorts of beneficent energies and forces, if you like. And I think if you analyze many of the problems, certainly from a sort of mental health perspective, many of people's problems now arise from a sense of disconnection and not feeling connected, and the obvious one is to their community or family or whatever, but in a less obvious way, but a way understandable to people who follow a spiritual path, it's all these other beings as well.
Yes, and it's so great to remember that the natural world is always all around us, right? And so we can have that connection in every moment wherever we are.
Hmm.
Jules, do you feel alone or do you feel supported by the world in your journey?
Like Philip said, I have a sort of sense for myself that I'm never alone. In fact, I jokingly say sometimes the bathroom's very crowded, but that sense of the other realms, the spirits, the nature spirits, ancestors, and in fact, in terms of human connection, I sometimes seek out being alone in order to deepen that other connection to the other realms. So no, I don't generally feel alone. And I say generally, I'm sure there are moments. I'm trying to think. Probably this last year has been on occasion a sense of sometimes feeling alone. And it's only because I've forgotten that there is this other vast realm that I am always connected to. And of course, it's the ego personality that's stepping in and going, I miss seeing somebody face to face in a cafe or whatever, in these strange realms that we are all living in at the moment. But no, I don't feel alone. And I distinguish between alone and loneliness as well. I think that's an interesting one. I was thinking the other day about loneliness, and it was what sparked me on this journey. I mean, we've had conversations on this, I know, but there was a moment in my mid-20s when I'd already been on a journey and was sort of getting back into the mainstream. And I walked into a supermarket. I'm not going to name which supermarket for advertising reasons, but, there was such a sense of loneliness that it triggered me back into going, okay, I was on something and I've lost it. So yeah, I think that's probably all I'm going to say at this moment.
It's great. I think as humans, loneliness is something that we encounter and experience sometimes. And so remembering all of the ways in which we are truly and deeply not alone, even though we may sometimes be lonely, that there is this vast interconnection, not only between all of the people around the world who are doing the same things and the same work, but between us and this vast magical universe. Thank you so much.
Great.
I'm here with Grace Harris, William Ayett, Claudia Taboada, Maya Brown, and Julian Venables. Now, you each bring different, amazing spiritual tools for leveling up our lives for the new era on planet Earth. Here's my question to you. What kind of magic opens up when we actually start using these tools in our lives? Who'd like to start?
Oh, well, thank you, Alicia. The amazing thing about astrology is it goes back, of course, thousands of years. And what I'm starting to rediscover recently is this is to understand a new type of consciousness that comes from astrology. You see, we've had science really kind of doing its thing for about, say, 300 years, but before science, there was the ancient cosmology, which goes right back to the Greek philosophers of 6th century BC, right up to the Renaissance, so up to the 17th century. And that ancient cosmology was experiencing our lives as being inside of the heavens. We were in the heavens. So when we're standing here on Earth and we look up at the night sky, or look up at the sky, we're actually in the heavens. And this is actually largely forgotten by science and things. We're actually in it. And that's really quite amazing when you think about it, because you see, science has been telling us that outer space, what's outer space? Well, they refer to it as vast expanses of nothingness, or dismal blackness, or the dark and the cold and the vacuity, and infinity peppered with odd-shaped asteroids and things. Okay, but the thing is, or oceans of dark matter, whatever that is, and that everything's separating the worlds, and there's a big nothingness or vacuum, and it's like, well, hang on a minute, right? Because the ancients used to see it as being in the heavens, right? Because it's a bit disconcerting to be told that there's infinite nothingness out there, when actually there's this beautiful space, right? But it's the space of consciousness. It's the space of moving through time in consciousness. And that's one of the big keys to astrology. It's a really uplifting experience to start to think like that. And when we think like that, and this is like part of what I'm going to be writing about in my book. This is very much what I'm doing in my book. But what we're going to be doing with astrology now is we're recreating the creation and realizing that the creation happens all the time. Okay, it's an ongoing thing. The creation is being creative. And it's then getting in tune with the god or the goddess or the creator of our lives and realizing that we are divine, because when we are in the heavens, we are expressing that super consciousness. People talk about the ascension, right? Well, in the astrology, like we're all going to go to the ascension. Well, in the astrology chart, there's an angle in the chart called the ascendant, which is also called the rising sign, and that is pointing to the east, to the eastern horizon. And actually, we are all ascending, potentially all ascending all the time. Anybody can become divinely enlightened at any second that they choose by looking to the east and seeing how the planet turns. Okay, just having that awareness that as the planet moves and rotates, the planets rise in the east. So every morning at sunrise, the sun rises in the east. It goes from darkness to light, right? And that's an ongoing thing. It's available all the time, every day, for everyone. and the other planets are also rising in the east. So once the sun, you get Venus before the sun, or Mercury before the sun, or after the sun, they then set in the west. So you get morning stars, evening stars, and so forth. And so this rising, this ascension, and in proper translation of the Bible, if you think about things like Aramaic and where the Bible comes from, angels are the actual heavenly hosts, which means they are the planets and the stars. That's what angels are. And that's correlated by the tree of life with Kabbalah, because they talk about the angels, being the planets. So, it's all there. Everything's there. We're in it right now. We are divine, but we just got to click into that consciousness, and there's so much more to tell you about this. It's all going in my book. I've just given you a very, I've just surfed the edge of something really special. And so, call on me for more, readings available, and I'm writing my book. And I do hope you're very welcome to talk to me anytime you like, just come and find me, So, and so I hope that's, hope that helps you realize that magic opens up, and when you use the right tools, right? The magic, we are in the magic, and we are of the magic, and we are the magic all the time.
I love that image, Julian, of us being in the heavens. And you're so right. That is something that we have lost as part of our worldview. And just the feeling of that is so kind of containing. I really feel held by that concept. Thank you so much.
After you, Grace, go ahead.
Alrighty. I love that question because the nature of magic for me is that in the beginning we have a notion or an idea as we see it from the books or the movies, but until it comes to us, we don't actually realize how it feels, what it looks like, and what it does to us for sure. And in my life and in the lives of the people that I teach, and just in my world, the magic that really comes out of learning to love yourself unconditionally and unapologetically is that magic of transformation. And the magic of transformation, it's like a never ending perpetual evolution. And as an example, when I was a child, I was someone who was very sickly, and I just did not have a lot of opportunities, coming from an upbringing where I was abandoned, and I experienced complex trauma off of that abandonment. And even I surprised myself. And as I lived my life, it was just one thing after the other. But every adversity, I was just going through it and doing my best. But I knew deep inside of me there was this sense of hope that I wasn't really sure where it was coming from, but it was always with me, especially when I was connected to nature, when I was out in the open fields, next to the woods and the trees. And now I realize that is my superpower, my natural connection to Mother Nature. But at the time, I don't know. I'll just go there and I'll feel this hope, and I'll do my best with whatever was happening in my life. And I transform myself at that stage of my life, and the next thing that happens, I'll try and do my best again, and I'll transform myself. And so in an essence, for example, someone who's very sickly had become so physically strong. Like I used to do pole dancing to fix my knee, right? And so and that was pretty incredible. And just to transform relationships, to transform businesses, to transform everything. And so it's that magic is only realized when you commit to loving yourself, and that includes forgiveness, not so much of others but of yourself for the transgressions. And so that would be the one magic that I'd love for everyone to commit to experience.
Thank you, Grace. That's beautiful. William,
Thank
do
you,
you want to jump in?
Yeah, thank you. Following on really from what Grace was saying, I think for me, and I'm a ritualist and I deal in ritual. So for me, the real magic kicks in because we get access. And by that, I mean we get access to the animate living world around us. And that the living world is listening to. So it's a relationship. And whether we call it the ancestors or whether we call it the spirits of place, whether we call it God or creation, it is living in our lives and is directly involved in our lives. And we get access by ritual, by entering into sacred space. So for me, that's a real magic, and it's a life changer. It's a lifesaver and it's a life changer. So it can heal, and at the same time, it can maintain the world around us. There's also another thing that happens, and that is, let's be honest, we're living in a soul-sick world. And there's a way that we can begin to heal the soul sickness of the world around us. We're all a part of it. We're all complicit in it. And at some point, we all need healing in it. And by doing ritual and by accessing, we can begin to sit in a reflected light. We contact the other, this other, whatever we care to call it. And we sit and stand in a reflected light. And when we do that, we begin to shine. And when we begin to shine,
we give other people permission to shine with us. And that, I think, is the thing for me, is that we can both give and receive. And in doing so, we add to the sum of both the beauty and the power of the world. So that's my answer to what was a fascinating question. Thank you very much, Alicia. Thank you.
Yes. And thank you for the magic that you bring. William, I got so much out of your talk, and the information that I got there actually helped inform the ritual that we're doing around this opening ceremony. So thank you.
Great.
I can go. I think my what I see as magic, and actually I'm taking a little bit of what Grace said and what William says. For me, it's the magic of allowing ourselves to become the absolute best version of ourselves, and to be able to take, to become and to transform from, whatever. Like in my case, I am a motherhood burnout survivor, and I can say that 11 years ago I was a mom who was physically and mentally exhausted. I had lost my identity. I didn't know who I was anymore. I am an autism mom, and I was, I had lost myself in the caregiving burnout. And I just see myself now, and I can't, I am a self-actualized woman that I was, always meant to be. And it's been through the power of, I guess, magic, have, to realize that we have the power to change. We have the power to evolve. We have the power to see challenges, and to see obstacles and setbacks as opportunities to learn and grow. And I think that's one of the things that I want the audience to keep, to remember, is that we have the power to change, to take charge. We can take charge of our lives, and we can become the best versions of ourselves.
Brilliant, Claudia. I love the way you're pointing to magic is active. Magic is not just this happened and I don't know how. There are fundamental laws and rules of magic. And when we apply ourselves to those beautiful, invisible laws, amazing transformation occurs.
I agree. Yeah.
Maya, you bring some of the most beautiful tools for healing. How do you feel that magic begins to open up when we start to recognize and apply those tools in our lives?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. And I'm so inspired hearing from you all as well. So I feel like my response is, another side of the same coin. For me, what can happen when we live with this magic is true alignment, and that's within ourselves and with each other and with the world. And I found that for so many of us, our identity and our perception of our power is so enmeshed in other things, whether it's in achievement or other people's validation or lack thereof. And the edges of who we are get kind of blurred in life. And so I think when we can find the magic through all the tools that people in this summit are offering, we're able to access a sense of power and alignment where we have more confidence in who we are. And I think it's especially important when we're talking about a world of uncertainty, as we all have come to know all too well in this past year, especially. And in my work with helping people support others, there's so much that we don't know, and so much that we could get wrong, and so much that could change like that. So when we are living in alignment, and when we do have a perceived power in who we are and the space we occupy, then we're able to move through the uncertainties and the changes of life and the world with, with this sense of knowing that we are enough. And when we mess up, we're still enough. And when we don't know the answer, we're still enough. And for me, I think we all could use an extra dose of that confidence and alignment and magic.
I am here with Jenai, Lane, Frater, Ashen, Chassan, Kathy, Drew, and Andrew Cowie. You four are our High Vibe Friday, and I was just blown away watching your interviews by how much wisdom is transmitting through each of you, and in such different ways. What do you see as possible for human beings as ancient wisdom becomes more accessible in the modern world?
Thanks so much for having me. One of the things that I think we're in dire need of is that ancient wisdom. And I think the important thing to remember is that that wisdom lives within us. If you're attending this particular gathering, you've been around. You're an old soul. So there is a lot of remembering to do. And I know in my own personal experience, one of the things that I've had the sort of honor and gift of is connecting to the ascended masters and being taught by them directly. And of course, they're here for all of us. And when Mary Magdalene appeared in my bedroom one night, she said, "Jenai, it's time to remember, to remember." And that really resonated with me because for most of my life, I was a seeker. I was always looking outside of myself for wisdom out there and not finding the answers because I was looking outward instead of inward. And as I turned my gaze and my attention in towards my high spiritual heart, that remembering started to bubble up. And that wisdom that I've carried through lifetimes, through incarnations as a soul, became readily available and more integrated in my humanity. And that helped my gifts to be birthed and thus my contribution to be given. And we're really at a time in our evolution where it is not an option anymore to negate that ancient wisdom that lives within us. And we have to learn to do things differently than we've been doing them, because the negation of that wisdom means the negation, for example, of the feminine, the divine feminine. And it means the negation of the heart and sort of allowing the head to be our master. And so when we start this integration process of this remembering, we evoke our own wisdom center. We wake it up, and everybody has one. And this wisdom then can come through us in a way that changes our walk here on the earth plane, right? And it changes the way we interact with each other. And it changes the way we treat the planet, right? It changes the way that it's so innovative and creative. Years ago, I remember before I was doing this work more consciously, I would sometimes receive these ideas that came from, I don't know where they came from. They were like inventions, they were creative. They would just download when I was in the shower or sleeping. And that's because my mind was off. And so as we learn to turn the mind off, drop down into our heart center, we start to really get connected to that deep inner wisdom. So, I'm really excited about this time in human history. And I know that I chose to incarnate at this time to support this great awakening that's happening right now. And I know many of you who are here are also here for that very reason as well, and together we can really share our wisdom in a great humility, because that's the other thing the masters have really taught me, that everybody has a piece of the puzzle. We don't have them all. you know? And so when we show up willing to learn and dropping our what we think we know for a deeper innate felt sense knowing, then that humility really helps us to evolve into the really the masters we are and that are waiting to be birthed in us. Yeah.
Well, remembering that we all have a piece of the puzzle is just such a juicy and important part of it. I love it. That really sums up what we are doing here with the Real Life Magic Virtual Summit, is bringing all of these different pieces together, all these different types of wisdom and these different energies, so that we can all grow in our own ways together.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting question. And in such a today's society with knowledge and at least information being so readily available, there's kind of the assumption that a lot of people will they'll become more enlightened or they'll become more wise through this, and that's definitely the hope for a lot of people, and definitely some people will. At least in my field of magic and study, there's more minds, more scholars, and more practicing magicians than ever before in history, quite likely, with access to manuscripts and information about magic, both historically and currently, uh, readily available, more so than ever before in history as well. And a lot of these people are sharing, and it's really interesting to see folks coming together. And there's a lot more being developed, and a lot more people are getting into this and having experiences. But at the same time, it's kind of a paradox where the occult remains hidden. It remains the occult, despite the readily available information out there. There's a lot of people that are still uh, completely oblivious to it or blind to it, that don't know the kind of wisdom that is available. But I think that's purposeful for a lot of reasons as well. And people are coming into this, I think, as they're supposed to. Um, People on this path will find themselves drawn to various paths and ideologies and spiritualities, no matter what's in front of them. And I think as they come to certain steps, they'll find that the information that they're meant to have comes to them, and they're going to find some access on the path. But there's kind of a conundrum in the West too, that with things so readily available, the information and the wisdom can be there, but sometimes teachers are lacking, or there's too many teachers, there's too many people preaching or trying to teach so many things that it's confusing for the student. So I always see kind of the both sides of things as humanity evolves and knowledge and wisdom becomes more available. You'll see some masterful people. Unfortunately, you'll see a lot of people kind of still struggling and confusing what certain wisdoms and knowledge are, and how much they actually work for them in their lives. But yeah, I think that's an ongoing thing. No matter how humanity kind of progresses, you'll see kind of both sides of that.
That's great. As we have so much available to us, at the same time, there's almost this individual task to find what is really ours, what really works for us, and that knowledge that speaks to us and comes to us as individuals. Andrew or Kathy, would you like to jump in?
I'd be very happy to jump in. Thanks very much for bringing us all together like this. I think it's an absolutely wonderful opportunity, and it really fits in with what Jenai was just saying about us all bringing different pieces to the puzzle and learning from each other. Because I think that is so important, is to always be open to new learnings on this journey, to see what we can get from each other. And I think we have a very real opportunity here as ancient wisdom becomes more readily available to really make people more aware of their interconnection, not just with each other, but with the planet that we live on and the wider forces of creation as a whole. And I think as more people become aware of that interconnection, we can start to see a move away from conflict and from this culture of very polarized debate, which I think we seem to have seen a lot of over the last few years, particularly. Um, People have become very black and white in their views, and it seems that no matter what the issue now, it seems to split the population right down the middle and to create another sort of conflict and strife. And one of the great things about the ancient wisdom teachings of all cultures is that they all invariably highlight the importance of taking the middle path and balancing the pairs of opposites in nature, and that things aren't necessarily as black and white as people think, but there are shades of gray. And the more we can find that sense of balance and equilibrium, then the more we can celebrate unity and diversity and learn from each other rather than scratching each other's eyes out every time we disagree over something. And for me, that is very much the way forward for humanity. And I think it's fantastic that you've brought forward this summit, which is a great example of bringing together people from such a diverse spectrum of backgrounds, but who all have this shared interest and belief in creating magic and in helping people to maximize their full potential. So I think this is going to be a very special week.
Thank you so much for bringing us all together. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the internal invitation it is for me to step up even higher. And so thank you so much for doing this. I wanted to add a word to ancient wisdom and to say our innate ancient wisdom, because for me, our wisdom is contained within the heart of every particle, every plant, every planet, every person. And that for me, the ancients had maybe greater access to that innate nature. I believe because they had such an intimate relationship with nature itself, with its essence. And so having that relationship with nature allowed them to have a greater relationship with our nature, with what is our nature. And so what becomes possible for me when I really allow myself to sink into it is literally everything. Everything becomes possible the more I and we allow ourselves to become available to that nature, since it is who we are and it is part of us. To me, it's not about getting that ancient wisdom, it's about becoming available to it. And as I and we become available to that ancient nature, my experience is that that out in the physical world, we manifest a world that's more resonant with the expression of our hearts and our love, and one where our experiences, we're co-sourcing with Source, that the magic, the miracles, and the majesty that we've spoken about before, that this becomes far more commonplace to me. And more powerful than that, because I believe that we're not going to eliminate contrast and variety and diversity and misunderstandings and challenges and the unpredictable nature. To me, that is actually that is the alchemy. The contrast is the alchemy that provides us with what allows us to evolve in the first place. And so I don't see that going away. The biggest part for me is that who we are, how we come to something changes, that this isn't about accomplishment, it's about relationship, and we create a whole different quality of relationship with our experiences when we know that those experiences come from a greater wisdom, when we know that they're here for us and not against us, is that what changes for me is that we are we become empowered in a fabulous, magical, wonderful way to be in these intimate co-sourcing relationships with the moment, no matter how it shows up. And before that, to me, my experience is that we're on a roller coaster or we're on a seesaw. We're constantly in our polarity thinking in our minds with all its consequences. We're or always at risk and always activating the hero within us to deal with those risks that we experience. And when we can know that this moment, exactly as it is our friend, and we cultivate that relationship with this moment, we are given the gifts of insight and the gifts of evolution and the gifts of creativity and contribution.
I am joined by Fiona Gilbert and Leslie Benson, who have really amazing, in-depth teachings about different ways to get to know ourselves. Underneath the journey to discover our magic is the beautiful and sometimes difficult reality that we're each different and unique. Leslie, Fiona, what are some of the ways you've discovered to really get to know and totally love yourself? Fiona, what do you think?
I think to be, and it's going to sound weird, and having raised kids and having started businesses, and we're juggling so many different things, and some days you actually don't know who you are. Which hat do you have on? So I think the biggest thing for us is you have to realize that at the end of the day, you've done the best you can, and you could have poured coffee on your white blouse heading out the front door. You've run to someone in the parking lot and dinged their car, and the eggs broke when you brought them into the house. But at that end of that day, you have done the best you can do given all the circumstances. And as we learn at the end of the day to sort of say, that's the best I did, we can then extend it out to other people. So we're not as judgy, and we're not as, I guess, cruel or mean when people are lacking. Because if you go, I realize I used to get really upset about, I just wish they'll get their shit together, and assuming that I have my stuff together, which I don't. So when I go into the world, just knowing that I really am doing the best I can right here, right now, and so are you, and so's the next person, and everybody's doing the best they can. The world's not as overwhelming. The world's not as everything's coming at you, because if you're assuming that everybody's holding up their own little space in the world, we're all working towards the same thing. So by doing that, we can be kinder to ourselves. We can love ourselves a bit more, and we're, especially as moms, you're gentler on yourself and you're gentler on your kids, because everybody's, it doesn't matter if you've had 6 tantrums, and someone's you've dragged a kid out the supermarket by their ankles. You've done the best you can, and everybody's done the best they can, and that's okay. And tomorrow's another day.
Oh, thank you for that. What an important reminder. We are all doing our best. We really are in every moment. And sometimes that might not look pretty, but it's the truth. Leslie, what would you say are some of the best ways you've discovered to really get to know and love yourself?
I'm going to carry on from Fiona there, and I'm going to add into that piece about, you've done the best you can. And when you acknowledge that you're doing the best you can, one of the things that you're doing is facing yourself in the mirror. You're looking at yourself honestly and allowing yourself to see your own being and learning about yourself, so that you can understand that, yes, you might have emotions coming up, but they are okay. And you can bring them in, and you can hug them, and you can use those lessons to actually move forwards. So you can learn, if you're having a hard day, give yourself some self-care. Take that time out. I love using this thing of what I call state change. Even Fiona will be laughing in the background at this, because I'll even do it in conversations that we have. Say, okay, just walk outside and go and stand on the grass, and step. Have your feet somewhere else. Or stand up, dance. Any of those things to actually sort of just move the energy in your body, to remember who you are and allow yourself to be you, because you are okay. You are perfectly okay as you are. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons that we can all take, is remembering that we are this magnificent being here on planet Earth, having experiences, having our own journey. And our journey is our journey. And it doesn't matter what it looks like to anybody else. It doesn't have to fit anybody else's box.
It takes courage to uncover our magic and live authentically in this world. And I think learning to trust ourselves is one of the most important lessons on that journey. But what does learning to trust ourselves look like? Beth Elaine Haynes, Marla Fries, and Sandra Walston have just joined me to take a look at this question. What does learning to trust ourselves look like? And what would you say to someone just setting out on that path?
Well, I think that being curious is really important. Trying not to know when you don't know, because even though we are very intuitive, we might not know. So being curious, that gives us an opportunity to be a witness to how we think, what's coming out of our mouths, and what is actually happening around us. I mean, we're having magic, we're getting experiences almost every day. So paying attention, but not being frightened in any way, but being curious.
Thank you, Marla. Curiosity is so important, and we can all use that reminder every once in a while. Sandra, what does learning to trust ourselves look like? And what would you say to someone just setting out on that path?
Well, let's take one question at a time. First of all, trust and courage are core competencies. And I cannot trust myself in managing my convictions and values, reinventing myself, facing any kind of fear of uncertainty, unless I have a bedrock of courage. I usually look at it as a courage meter. What is my courage meter? Or maybe said another way is, what is my reservoir of courage? So I know I can trust when I have that reservoir of courage that's full. So when I talk about courage, I first need to just say, in my plug, that it is about your heart and spirit. So many times I'll listen to the ear of my heart and knowing, okay, what is the ear that represents my heart saying to me that I can trust this situation, or that I need to speak up? Or how often have I swallowed my voice knowing that I did not trust myself? And what was that chatter that was going on that hindered me from speaking my true self and standing in the trust that I know of who I am? Because when your time comes to pass on, you want to be centered in your courage. You don't want regret. You don't want misgivings. You don't want anger. You want to migrate in grace. And it takes an enormous amount of courage to migrate in grace. And so if you can trust yourself and know, okay, there it was again. I just swallowed my voice. Okay, why? Why did I swallow my voice? Well, usually there's a story that is kind of like on a treadmill, just continuing to grind and grind, but we're not really always that conscious of it. So if we can find out what that story, that false self story is that's keeping ourselves from trusting ourselves, then we can migrate on to being more courage centered and living in true trust of ourselves. And your question of what would I say to someone setting out on their journey would be, well, How often have you swallowed your voice? Again and again. How often have you decided that, well, I just really can't do that? And why? What is it that you're not trusting within yourself? So when I go home at night, or I'm just home at night, I can look in the mirror and I can say, I stood in my true self. I stood in my authentic voice. I can know that I was true to my heart. And when we're true to our heart, we are standing in our courage. Courage meaning heart and spirit. Not courage meaning fear. Not courage meaning something extravagant or heroic or sensational. Just a centeredness that keeps us aligned with who we are and what our voice is so that we're trusting. So the thing that I would ask you to do is to think about 2 questions. What courageous conversation have you been putting off? Because we all have one. And what would you do right now if you had unlimited courage? And ponder those 2 questions, and you'll know whether or not you're standing in your true self, trusting who you are. So that would be my suggestion.
Yay. I love it. Thank you, Sandra.
Alicia, it's the most powerful question I feel that I've ever been asked, to be honest. And it's taken quite a bit of pondering to allow it to float, because I'm not a rehearsed person, I'm a channeler. And it came to me this morning in my chaos is that a person who's learned to trust is vulnerable. It looks like a person who's been held back, has been restricted, has been indoctrinated, or has been in a situation where they've been controlled. And all of a sudden, these rules, these regulations, these stipulations of if you don't do a certain thing, then you don't get rewarded, or you don't get loved, or you don't get your needs met, and you break away from that, you're so vulnerable. You know, you're not quite sure which direction to go, which way to turn, who to talk to. And that's when you develop this innate intelligence, this intelligence that you knew that situation that you're in was so wrong, that life is not like this. There must be something better out there for me. So you learn to trust, you break free. And when you're out in that freedom, you think it's going to be simple, but it's not, because then you have to develop all these new skills of learning to trust yourself and what direction do I go and who do I believe in, until you develop this beautiful relationship with this physical body, which will tell you every truth that you need to know. Your gut instinct, that first feeling, I've got goosebumps just talking about it. And when you're on this and in this amazing journey of awakening to the truth that you are, you need to, and that muscle of developing trust, it's new, it's exciting, it's exhilarating, it's scary, it's all sorts of magic. That's when I would say, for the person who is developing their new muscle of trust, trusting themselves, trusting the universe, would be to get a good mentor, to go to lots and try lots of things, to feel what fits, because your physical body, your emotionals will tell you exactly, this is my tribe, because we are tribal. It's our instinct to be in with people of like-mindedness, where we feel safe, we feel loved, we feel nurtured, and we have our needs met. So when developing a relationship with trust with yourself, know that you're vulnerable, know that it is a hyper time, because you're hypersensitive, you're hyper excited. So the importance of a strong team around you. Read the books of successful people, successful mentors, people who have been on your journey, and their knowledge will help shine the light on your path. That's what I would do.
That is just beautiful, Beth. Thank you so much for sharing your unique magic with us.
Thanks for joining us at this very special event.
Our little team has put so much heart, soul, and magic into this summit, and we are so excited to share it with the world. The real fun starts tomorrow, so head on over to grab your free ticket. It's sure to be a magical week.